Our marriage is too boring, Michael. I want to have fun with other men. You can have your own fun, too. Let's make it an open marriage, or I'll walk away." Those were the exact words Rebecca threw at her husband before slamming her wine glass down on the table, her lips curling into a daring smile. She believed she was taking control, but what happened next flipped her world upside down in ways she never imagined. By the end, she would learn that sometimes the door you force open is the very one that locks you out forever. Now, let me pause and ask you, what would you do if your partner said that to you? Would you fight to hold on? Or would you walk away with your dignity intact? Think about it, because the way Michael responded to those words changed his life forever. And not in the way Rebecca imagined. Michael had always believed marriage was sacred. He grew up in a modest suburban neighborhood, raised by parents who worked hard, fought hard, but always returned to one another. Loyalty was stitched into the very fabric of his soul. So when Rebecca leaned back in her chair that night, her voice cold and unrecognizable, he thought he misheard her. "An open marriage?" His voice cracked. "Yes," Rebecca said, rolling her eyes as though she were discussing a new brand of coffee. "We're too predictable. You go to work, you come home, we eat, we sleep. That's not living, Michael. I want more." The words sliced him. He looked around their home, the framed wedding photos, the walls they painted together, the sofa where they once cuddled during storms. How could she look at all this and call it boring? Rebecca mistook his silence for weakness. She smirked. "Don't look at me like that. Everyone's doing it now. It's modern. Don't be so old-fashioned." But Michael's heart pounded. He wanted to scream, to ask who had been whispering these poisonous ideas into her ear. Instead, he asked quietly, "And if I say no?" Rebecca leaned forward, her lipstick leaving a scarlet print on the rim of her glass. "Then I'll leave, and you'll lose me forever." Her ultimatum was delivered like a dagger to the chest. That night, Michael lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words. His pride told him to walk away, but his fear of losing her chained him down. He remembered the girl he fell in love with years ago, the one who laughed at his silly jokes, who believed he was enough. He clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, agreeing, would save their marriage. So the next morning, against his instincts, against his upbringing, Michael whispered the words that would set the stage for everything that followed. "Fine, Rebecca. If that's what you want, we'll try it your way." Her smile was triumphant, almost victorious. She kissed him lightly on the cheek as though rewarding a child. But here's what Rebecca didn't realize. In forcing that door open, she had unleashed a storm that neither of them could control. Because while she believed she was stepping into freedom, she had no idea that Michael's journey through that same open door would lead him to someone who would change his life forever and leave Rebecca shattered in the end. The first weekend after Michael agreed, Rebecca transformed. She wasn't the weary wife who used to curl up in sweatpants on Friday nights. No, she was suddenly a woman reborn. She bought a new wardrobe, tight dresses, glittering heels, shades of lipstick Michael had never seen her wear in all their years together. She started staying out late, coming home with the smell of cologne on her skin, and an energy that was equal parts electric and reckless. At first, Michael told himself it was harmless. Maybe she just needs this. Maybe she'll get it out of her system. But each time she swept past him, humming to herself, her phone lighting up with messages from strangers whose names he didn't know, the knife twisted deeper. Rebecca didn't just change her routine, she changed her friends. She began meeting with a small circle of women at a downtown cafe, women who bragged loudly about their open relationships as though they were winning trophies. One evening, Michael overheard Rebecca on the phone laughing. "Oh, you should have seen him. He nearly cried when I told him. But don't worry, he'll get used to it. Men always do." Those words broke something inside Michael. Not only was she pursuing other men, but she was parading his humiliation like a badge of honor. Rebecca's adventures grew bolder. She came home late on a Tuesday night, heels dangling from her hand, hair tangled, her lipstick smudged. Don't wait up for me next time, she said casually, as if he were the hired help. The next weekend she flaunted a silver bracelet on her wrist. A gift, she said, offering no explanation. When Michael asked, "Rebecca, is this really what you wanted to make me feel invisible?" She laughed. "You're being dramatic. You agreed to this. Don't act like a victim now." The cruelty in her tone shocked him more than the words themselves. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just wound, it transforms. Rebecca thought she was the only one writing this new chapter. She believed Michael would stay in the background, sulking while she basked in her so-called freedom. What she didn't realize was that the very rule she forced upon him would one day come back to haunt her. For now, Michael stayed quiet. He went to work, he came home, and he endured the late nights, the half-truths, the strange shadows of men slipping out of his driveway when he arrived too early. But inside, a storm brewed. Michael began spending time alone in the evenings, walking through the city, sitting in parks, watching couples laugh together on benches. He noticed the small gestures, women who touched their partner's arm, men who listened intently to their wives' stories. It reminded him of everything he and Rebecca once had, and everything she had so carelessly thrown away. One night, as he lingered at a quiet cafe sipping coffee alone, he met someone. A gentle voice broke into his solitude. "Mind if I sit here? The place is packed." Michael looked up, and for the first time in months he felt the faint flicker of something Rebecca's new adventures had nearly destroyed in him. Hope. Her name was Emily. She was nothing like Rebecca. She didn't wear diamonds on her wrists or perfume so strong it lingered on furniture long after she left. Emily's beauty was quiet, earth-toned cardigans, gentle laughter, and a kind of calm that made Michael feel for the first time in months like he could breathe. "Long day?" she asked that first evening as she set her cup of tea on the cafe table. Michael nodded, unsure why he didn't push her away. Maybe because Emily didn't pry. She just sat, sipping slowly, eyes soft and patient, as though she understood pain without needing it explained. But at home, the suffering continued. Rebecca grew more distant, more careless. Sometimes she didn't even bother lying. "Don't wait up," she said bluntly on a Saturday night, dressed in a red dress that Michael knew wasn't for him. He watched her leave, the click of her heels echoing like gunshots in the silence. Alone in their house, he felt the walls pressing in, the photographs mocking him with frozen smiles of better times. He wondered how long he could live like this, half a man in his own home. He kept up appearances at work, never letting his colleagues see the torment. But inside, shame clawed at him. Was he weak for agreeing? Was he pathetic for staying? And yet, night after night, he found himself back at that cafe. And more often than not, Emily was there too. Their conversations were simple at first. Books, movies, the weather. But beneath the small talk, Michael felt something stirring, an ache he had buried long ago, the need to be seen. One evening, Emily caught him staring at the street through the cafe window, his eyes heavy. "You look like someone carrying a storm," she said softly. Michael laughed bitterly. "Maybe I am." She tilted her head. "Storms don't last forever. Sometimes they clear the air." Her words sank deeper than she probably realized. At home, Rebecca mocked his quietness. "You're so gloomy lately," she sneered one night. "You should try living a little, Michael. Maybe find someone yourself. Isn't that what this is all about?" The irony cut deep. She thought she was taunting him, but she didn't know he had already met someone who made him feel alive again, not with lust or reckless adventure, but with kindness, with patience. Still, Michael didn't act. Not yet. He respected Emily too much to drag her into his mess, and part of him still clung, foolishly, to the hope that Rebecca might wake up and remember the vows she once made. But hope is fragile, and when betrayed too many times, it doesn't bend. It breaks. Michael's quiet suffering was shaping him, hardening him, preparing him for the moment he would finally stop being Rebecca's shadow. And when that moment came, it wouldn't just change his life. It would shatter hers. The first time Michael and Emily held hands, it wasn't planned. They were walking out of the cafe on a rainy evening. Michael had forgotten his umbrella, and Emily laughed as she held hers out, tilting it to cover them both. The rain pattered against the fabric, and in that small space beneath the umbrella, something shifted. Her fingers brushed his, warm against the cold drizzle. He didn't pull away. Neither did she. For weeks, their connection grew quietly. Michael was cautious, almost guilty, but Emily never pushed. She wasn't like Rebecca, demanding and insatiable. Instead, she listened. She cared. She noticed things, like how he stirred his coffee counterclockwise when he was nervous, or how he avoided looking at couples on the street. One night, as they sat at the cafe, Emily placed her hand over his. "You don't have to explain," she said gently. "I can see you're hurting. Just let yourself heal." Michael swallowed hard, his throat tight. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt safe enough to let his guard down. At home, Rebecca barely noticed his absences. She was too busy chasing new thrills, too busy bragging to her friends about the freedom she had created. She thought Michael was still the quiet, obedient husband waiting at home, too broken to fight back. But she was wrong. Because while Rebecca was busy chasing men who would never stay, Michael was stumbling into something she hadn't considered. Real love. The turning point came one evening when Emily looked at him with trembling hands. "Michael," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "There's something I need to tell you." He braced himself for what he didn't know. "I'm pregnant." The word hung in the air like thunder. Michael's world tilted, his mind flooded with questions, fear, doubt, disbelief. But beneath it all, something stirred inside him that he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. "You're sure?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, her eyes shimmering. "Yes, I know it's unexpected. And if this is too much, I understand. I'll figure it out." But Michael shook his head slowly, overwhelmed by the weight of it. He had been drifting in darkness for so long that the idea of new life, of creating something pure, felt like a miracle. And in that moment, he realized something startling. The happiness he had been chasing all along wasn't in Rebecca's chaotic freedom. It was here, in the quiet steadiness of a woman who respected him, who saw him, who offered him something Rebecca never could: unconditional love. Rebecca still believed she was winning. She believed Michael was the pitiful husband enduring her adventures in silence. But she had no idea that, in her quest for excitement, she had unknowingly pushed him into the arms of a woman who would change everything. And when Rebecca discovered the truth, her empire of illusions would come crashing down in ways she could never have imagined. It happened on a Sunday morning. Rebecca was sitting in the kitchen scrolling through her phone when she overheard Michael on a call in the living room. His tone was softer than she'd heard in years, almost tender. "Don't worry, Emily. I'll be there for the appointment. We'll go through this together." The name Emily stabbed at her. Rebecca's thumb froze on her phone screen. Slowly, she lowered it and listened harder. Pregnant. Appointment. Together. The words connected like puzzle pieces, and suddenly the world around her spun. She stormed into the living room, eyes blazing. "Michael, what the hell did you just say?" Michael froze, the phone still in his hand. He didn't flinch, didn't look guilty. He just stared at her, his expression calm, almost resigned. "Her name is Emily," he said quietly. "She's pregnant. And yes, the baby is mine." Rebecca's face drained of color. For a moment, she thought she misheard him. Then rage surged through her veins. "You? You got another woman pregnant? Are you insane? You were supposed to sit at home and wait for me. Not. Her voice cracked with fury. Michael stood slowly, his voice steady. "Not what, Rebecca?" Not find someone who actually treats me like I matter? You opened the door. You told me this was what you wanted. Rebecca's chest heaved. She expected him to apologize, to grovel, to beg for forgiveness. That was the script she had written in her head. She thought she could snap her fingers and pull him back whenever she wanted. Instead, he stood there, unwavering. You don't get to be angry about this, he said firmly. You demanded freedom. Now I've found mine. Rebecca's shock turned to desperation. You can't be serious, she hissed. She's nothing, just some fling. You're not leaving me for her. But Michael's eyes didn't waver. She's not a fling. She's the woman who's carrying my child. She's the woman who listens when I speak, who makes me feel alive again. She's everything you stopped being years ago. Those words cut her deeper than any betrayal. For the first time since her reckless adventure began, Rebecca felt something she hadn't expected. Fear. The next days were a blur. Rebecca tried to lure him back. She cooked his favorite meals, slipped into the dresses she once wore to impress him, even whispered empty promises late at night. But Michael saw through it all. Her actions weren't born of love. They were fueled by panic. When she confronted him again, tears streaming down her face, she screamed, "You can't throw away years of marriage for some mistake." Michael's reply was quiet but final. The real mistake was believing this was marriage at all. Rebecca had asked for an open marriage. She thought it would make her the winner, the one with control. But now, staring at her husband slipping further from her grasp, she realized she had opened the door not to freedom, but to her own downfall. And soon, the entire town would know. The whispers started small, like cracks in glass. It was Michael's absence from Rebecca's usual social gatherings that first drew attention. He no longer appeared at the Friday dinners with her new circle of liberated friends. Instead, people spotted him around town, at the pharmacy, buying prenatal vitamins, at the doctor's office holding Emily's hand. Soon, the truth spread like wildfire. By the time Rebecca heard the gossip, it was too late. The women she once boasted to now smirked behind her back, whispering, "Did you hear? Her husband got another woman pregnant." She thought she was in control. Guess not. Rebecca stormed home one evening, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled. "You humiliated me," she shouted at Michael. "Everyone's talking about it. Do you know how pathetic I look?" Michael didn't raise his voice. He sat on the couch, folding a baby catalog in his hands. "The only humiliation here, Rebecca, is the one you created for yourself. You demanded an open marriage. Now you're upset because I found something real?" Her face twisted with rage. "You're mine. You'll always be mine. She's nothing but—" "Stop," Michael snapped, his calm cracking for the first time. "Don't you dare talk about her like that. Emily is more of a wife to me already than you've been in years." Rebecca's words died on her lips. The silence that followed was more damning than any insult. Days turned into weeks and Michael stopped hiding. He walked through town with Emily by his side, her growing belly a visible reminder that a new life, literally and figuratively, was forming. When neighbors congratulated him, he smiled with a pride Rebecca hadn't seen in years. Rebecca, meanwhile, felt the walls closing in. The men she had entertained began fading away, uninterested in anything beyond fleeting nights. Her so-called friends stopped inviting her out, tired of her bitterness. And each night she returned to an empty house while Michael spent more and more time at Emily's small apartment across town. One night, Rebecca snapped. She waited for him in the living room, her eyes red from crying, her hands clutching a photo album from their wedding day. When Michael walked in, she shoved it toward him. "Do you even remember this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Do you remember what you promised me?" Michael looked down at the smiling faces frozen in time. He did remember. But those promises had been shattered the night Rebecca demanded an open marriage. "I remember," he said softly. "And I also remember the night you told me I wasn't enough. That night, Rebecca, our marriage ended. You just didn't realize it." Her sobs echoed through the empty house, but Michael didn't flinch. Now he knew where he belonged. The day Michael packed his bags was the day Rebecca finally realized she had lost him. It was a gray afternoon, rain streaking the windows, when she walked into their bedroom and saw the suitcase open on the bed. His clothes, neatly folded, deliberately chosen, were stacked inside. Not rushed, not accidental. Planned. Her voice cracked. "What are you doing?" Michael zipped the suitcase halfway, then looked at her with calm eyes. "I'm leaving, Rebecca." Panic surged through her veins. "Leaving? For her? You're throwing away our entire marriage for some woman you barely know?" Michael shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. I'm not leaving for Emily. I'm leaving because of you, because you broke something I can't fix. Emily didn't destroy our marriage. You did, the night you told me I wasn't enough." Rebecca stumbled back, her chest heaving. "But I didn't mean, you wanted freedom." He cut in sharply. "And now you have it. I won't stand in your way anymore." He lifted the suitcase and walked past her. She grabbed his arm desperately, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Michael, please, don't do this. I was wrong. I was stupid. We can go back, close the marriage, fix things." Michael paused, his face softening for a brief moment. Then he shook his head. "Rebecca, some things can't be undone. You don't get to shatter trust and then decide when it's convenient to glue it back together. I deserve better. And so does our child." Her eyes widened. "Our child?" "No," he said firmly. "Emily's and mine." The finality in his voice was like a death sentence. That night, Michael moved into Emily's apartment. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't grand. It was small, modest, with second-hand furniture and walls painted a pale yellow. But it was filled with warmth. Emily welcomed him not with ultimatums, not with arrogance, but with quiet joy. As he set his suitcase down in the corner, she smiled softly. "Are you sure about this?" Michael nodded without hesitation. "I've never been more sure of anything." For the first time in years, he felt light, free not in the way Rebecca had preached, but in the way his soul longed for. Freedom wasn't sleeping with strangers. Freedom was choosing peace, choosing love, choosing to build something real. Back at the old house, Rebecca collapsed on the bed they once shared, clutching his pillow and sobbing until her throat burned. She thought the thrill of an open marriage would make her untouchable, that she could always pull Michael back with a snap of her fingers. But now, for the first time, she felt the crushing weight of true freedom. Freedom to face her loneliness, her mistakes, and the silence of a house that no longer belonged to her heart. Michael had made his decision, and there was no turning back. At first, Rebecca told herself Michael would come back. He always had before. Every fight they ever had, he was the one to apologize, the one to bridge the silence. She clung to that belief like a life raft, convincing herself this was just another storm they'd ride out. But weeks turned into months and Michael didn't return. Instead, the town saw him walking proudly beside Emily, her belly round with life, his hand protectively on her back. Their quiet joy became the talk of the neighborhood. People admired him for stepping into fatherhood with such tenderness, and Rebecca, she became the punchline. At the salon, women whispered behind manicured hands. She thought she was clever with that open marriage nonsense. Now look, her husband's starting a family with someone else. At the grocery store, she felt eyes on her, pity mixed with disdain. Even the cashier who once greeted her warmly now barely made eye contact. The men she had entertained? Gone. One by one they vanished, some ghosting her, others bluntly stating what she dreaded to hear. "I'm not looking for anything serious." To them, she was just a thrill, a distraction, a story to brag about over drinks. Not one stayed, not one cared. Her so-called friends, the ones who cheered her on when she first announced her modern marriage, also drifted away. Freedom was exciting in theory, But nobody wanted to be associated with the woman who had been outplayed at her own game. Loneliness became Rebecca's shadow. Nights stretched endlessly in the hollow house. She'd sit in the kitchen with a half-empty glass of wine, scrolling through old photos of her and Michael. Vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. She'd zoom in on his smile, trying to remember when he stopped looking at her that way. Sometimes she dialed his number, but he never answered. Once, in desperation, she drove to Emily's apartment. She stood across the street, watching through the window as Michael laughed while painting a crib. Emily, glowing and serene, leaned against him, her hand resting on her belly. Rebecca's chest tightened until she could hardly breathe. She turned and ran before they saw her, but the cruelest blow came at a family gathering. She attended out of obligation, sitting among cousins and distant relatives. Eventually, someone blurted out, "Rebecca, isn't Michael having a baby soon?" The question wasn't malicious, just curious, but the laughter that followed, the sidelong glances, broke her completely. She excused herself to the bathroom and stared at her reflection. The woman in the mirror didn't look like the triumphant wife who once demanded freedom. She looked empty, used, forgotten. And for the first time, Rebecca whispered aloud the truth she had avoided. "I destroyed my own marriage." The fall was complete. She had lost her husband, her friends, her dignity. All that remained was the echo of choices she could never take back. It was winter when Rebecca finally broke. Snow lined the sidewalks, holiday lights twinkled in windows, and everywhere she looked, families gathered together. Laughter spilled from houses as neighbors decorated trees and children played in the streets. The joy around her only magnified the emptiness inside. That night she picked up the phone and dialed Michael's number for the 100th time. To her surprise, he answered. "Rebecca?" His voice was cautious. Her chest tightened. "Michael, please. Can we talk?" There was silence on the line, then a quiet sigh. "What is there left to say?" "Everything," she whispered. "I was wrong. I was selfish. I thought freedom meant excitement, but all it gave me was emptiness. Please, Michael, come home. We can fix this. I'll close everything. No more games. Just us." Her words spilled out like water from a broken dam. Tears rolled down her face as she begged for the life she had once thrown away, but Michael's tone was steady, firm. "Rebecca, I don't hate you, but I don't belong in that house anymore. My life is here now, with Emily, with our child." His words stabbed deeper than any insult ever could. "Don't say that," she cried. "We've been married for years. You can't just erase that." "I'm not erasing it," he said softly. "I'm accepting it for what it was, and what it became. You wanted an open marriage. I gave you what you asked for. But the truth is, we lost each other the night you stopped seeing me as enough." Rebecca's sobs grew louder. "Please, Michael. I'll do anything. Just don't marry her. Don't build a family without me." Michael closed his eyes, his hand resting on Emily's shoulder as she listened quietly beside him. Emily's presence was steady, grounding, everything Rebecca wasn't. "Rebecca," he said at last, "I'm already building that family. Emily and I are getting married in the spring. I want to give this child the life we never had together, one built on trust, not conditions. I'm sorry." The phone slipped from Rebecca's hand. She collapsed onto the couch, shaking uncontrollably. The words echoed in her ears. "We're getting married. We're having a child. We're building a life." In the weeks that followed, Rebecca tried again and again, showing up at his workplace, leaving messages, even writing long letters. But Michael never wavered. He remained polite, even compassionate, but unyielding. Meanwhile, Emily's belly grew, and with it, Michael's joy. Neighbors smiled when they passed, offering congratulations. His world was full of warmth, while Rebecca's was full of silence. Her plea had failed. For years, she had believed she controlled the marriage. But now she saw the truth. The power she thought she had was an illusion, and the man she once took for granted was gone forever. The spring wedding was small, intimate but radiant with joy. White roses framed the garden where Michael and Emily exchanged vows. Friends and family gathered, their faces glowing with happiness as Michael slipped a ring onto Emily's finger. The sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and heartfelt toasts filled the air. For the first time in years, Michael felt truly alive. Emily, standing beside him with her gentle smile and growing belly, embodied the very thing he thought he had lost forever: hope. But not far from the celebration, hidden by distance yet haunted by the sound of bells, Rebecca sat alone at her dining table. The same dining table where she had once told Michael their marriage was too boring. The irony cut deeper than any knife. This very table had started her downfall. She had thought lovers would bring her freedom, but each one had come and gone, leaving her emptier than before. Some had ghosted her after a few nights, others treated her like a passing amusement. Not one had stayed. Not one had cared when her tears soaked the pillow at night. Her so-called freedom had become a prison. She remembered her friends, those who had once cheered her on for being bold enough to demand an open marriage. Where were they now? Most had moved on, busy with their own families. None visited her, none called. The loudest voices that once egged her on had gone silent, leaving her to face the ruin alone. Word spread in town. People whispered about how Rebecca had pushed her husband into another woman's arms. Once admired for her beauty and confidence, she was now a cautionary tale. At the grocery store, she overheard women murmuring, "That's her, the one who lost her husband because she wanted to play games." She lowered her head, cheeks burning, as shame followed her like a shadow. Meanwhile, Michael built a life of peace. He spent weekends painting the nursery with Emily, laughing when the baby kicked at his touch. For the first time, he understood what it meant to be loved without conditions. Not loved for his willingness to bend or break, but for who he was. The contrast was stark. His days were full, his nights restful. Hers were long, heavy, and hollow. One evening, unable to resist, Rebecca wrote him one last letter. "Michael, I see everything now. I lost the man who truly loved me because I mistook boredom for emptiness. I thought freedom meant chasing others, but real freedom was right beside me, in the loyalty we once shared. You were my safe place, and I destroyed it. If there's any justice in life, I hope others learn from my mistake. Please, don't hate me. Just remember I once mattered to you." She never mailed it. She knew it would change nothing. Rebecca learned too late that excitement without loyalty is hollow. She thought she could open the door to fun and still keep her husband's love. But once opened, some doors cannot be closed. Michael found redemption in a love built on respect and tenderness. Rebecca was left with regret, a living echo of the choice she made.